Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Fantasia in 1940. This film was directed by Dick Humer and Joe Grant, and yes, basically, this is the third Disney animated feature film, and here we are with this wonderful steelbook. Here, this is a film as well. I've rarely seen this film. This is actually my third viewing tonight, a rewatch, of course. Yeah, so it's a very, very popular film. It's named, especially by critics, as one of the greatest animated films, full stop. Surprisingly, this is IMDb as well. This is actually the highest rated of the five original, Golden Age films by Disney, of course. Again, this is produced by Walt Disney, and it's the third one, as I say. And yes, very, very, interesting film, and of course, there is people who don't like the film, and it is more, kind of, certainly in the early stages, it's more an experiment than anything. Of course, the idea is to kind of make interpretations of some famous pieces of music. There's roughly eight kind of segments of the film. You could say this is a film, this collection of shorts, not really a feature film. Of course, you have the orchestra, and you have, of course, the narrator, as is referred to, who kind of shows up, after each segment has kind of ended. And of course, before each one, he says, roughly what this represents, the idea behind it and stuff. And yes, this is a film that I've only seen, as I say, a few times, and actually less than 10 years old was my last viewing. I'm now actually, 22, so many, many years since I saw this. It was never one that I kind of, certainly of the original five, it was my least favourite. I didn't watch it, of course, as much as the other ones. For me, the Golden Age is the best age of Disney, kind of consistently. Yes, there's only five, but, I think definitely for me the best. And I think, three of them are masterpieces, and they're the three that I've not reviewed yet. Of course, I reviewed Dumbo. Great, great film. Loved it, of course. I will say, this is, of course, acclaimed as, at times the best of that age of all time, really. And it is my least favourite. I think seeing it again, I think definitely, of course, I appreciate loads of different parts. Even more than as a kid. Of course, I do remember quite a lot of segments. They came back to me. The dinosaur sequence, of course, from a young age, I kind of had an obsession, with dinosaurs and stuff. And of course, I remember the kind of the fantasy sequence as well. The Olympus one. And yeah, the Sorcerer's Apprentice as well, with Mickey Mouse, of course, used as it's kind of the front cover, the mascot, you could say. And after this, of course, he was big, kind of popularity, mainly because of this as well. And yes, I think, of course, I love animated films. They're one of my main obsessions of cinema. Disney, just love Disney. I think certainly, last century a lot more. But of course, there are great ones, a couple of great ones, this century. The Golden Age, the ones for me that are overall the best. They're just the heights of them, of this age, just the sense of wonder. Overall, the storytelling, just at the best, really. Overall, kind of the periods of Disney. None of these are actually my number one favourite, but one of them is the second and third favourite Disney films from this age. This film, I think, is a great one, but I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it's a masterpiece. I think it is a great film, but I think, and all these five films are great, but I think it's a bit too, experimental and slightly uneven. I think, yes, I didn't actually have a flaw. I didn't have a problem with the kind of the way that the orchestra and that you touch back in with them occasionally, after everyone, and they kind of course, the guy, of course, explains, some of the stuff before you see it. Of course, that can annoy me if that's done in certain films. And of course, I would probably like to see it, at one point, just all the way through without this, because I don't need to be told what is going on visually and stuff. But I think actually it's fine. It doesn't taint the film at all. I actually enjoyed, kind of going back to them and stuff. And I think actually the merging of that, the live action and the actual animation, is actually really great. The only flaws I really have is slightly the beginning, very beginning segment of the animation, the first sort of movement is a bit flat. It is more just shapes and stuff and colours used, which can be done perfectly. But I think just a bit flawed there. Didn't quite kind of, I didn't love this moment, and of course as well actually the The Night on Bald Mountain, I think actually is again a bit flat. It's definitely one of the worst sequences of the film. It just didn't quite engage me in terms of the visuals even, and just the overall kind of the concept, the execution there just could have been better. And yeah, I think this is a very, very hard film to review. I don't know how much you're reviewing this because it really is not like any other, certainly animated film. It's one of the most bizarre films, in existence actually. And it's very, very strange that Disney released this. Of course, hats off, for certainly their third film as well. It could have been very, very, something that ruined them. Really, it's really surprising to me how I do love the film overall, pretty much most of it anyway. But I do think it's very strange how this is so popular because it's very, very abstract. It is an art house film in many ways, but it's a Disney film with Mickey Mouse in it. I think very, very bizarre, and of course it's hard to review a film. It is kind of a collection of shorts in many ways. Of course, each segment, yes, in some ways does tell a story in itself. The overall, if you put them together, it does not tell a narrative. So it is kind of a collection of shorts. And of course, you've got the kind of orchestra there, explaining things and stuff. So it's very, very different, of course, and hard to kind of review. But, really, and there's no dialogue in the actual animation sequences. It is music, of course, used. Combined, of course, visuals, and yes, that is at height. It's height what cinema is. Of course, all silent films roughly are this. And I love, of course, I think visual storytelling, music and stuff, and characters. They're the main things that really, the three main ingredients really in cinema. This film, it doesn't have any dialogue. It doesn't have an overall progression really to the narrative. Although you could say each sequence kind of builds in depth, you could say. It starts off very, very simple. Different shapes. Of course, you go through the dinosaurs, and stuff, and then of course you have the Pegasus sequence, and then it's very, very dark, kind of nightmarish ending sequence, and then you've got just after that the kind of epilogue, you could say, which is just kind of very, very spiritual. It does have a slight progression in terms of the mood. It has a flow, but it doesn't really tell an overall story. But I think judging every single animation piece, these 8. The way what they were going for, the way that it's used with the music, the blend of visuals and sound, what they were doing here, the colours, the actual charm within the creatures, the animals and stuff within these sequences, just the overall kind of what they show and how they do this. How would I, what would I say about this? I'd say it's great. I'd say how it made me feel, mostly really, really just engaged in this. It was very spiritual. It's a film that, of course, it doesn't have, as I say, it doesn't have an overall narrative progression, but within these sequences, it does have a progression, especially the dinosaur sequence, of course, and the Pegasus sequence. These are my favourites. The Sorcerer's Apprentice as well. That is a great, great sequence. I loved it. It's very funny as well. That one. My favourite is, this fantastical kind of, it's probably the longest sequence actually, Beethoven's music is used there. That was my favourite. That's probably perfect, the perfect piece of the film. Actually, I think it's just wonderful, and I think just the animation to this film is always perfect, not a single flaw. Yes, it's a bit more, certainly at first as well, you could say it's bit indulgent, you could say. It's not, a film, as I say, that's got complete structure. It's definitely a bit too uneven to be called a masterpiece or anything like that. I don't think it's one of the best films ever made. Many people do say that. I say, all the other 4, of the 5 of these films can be considered that, certainly on my list. I think the best 2 of this age are in my top 50. There's a clue. And yes, I do think, there's so many great, great animated films. This isn't one of the best films ever made for me. I do think it really does make me feel a lot. It's beautiful at times. It's very, very sad and tragic. It's poetic, of course, especially the dinosaur sequence. The way it portrays death, especially in that part, is really, really wonderful. It has many, many different variations, of course. To the animation, it uses a lot of different film, so many different colours. It's just at times it is, it puts you in a trance. Even when there's not actually, the kind of moments at the beginning where there's much of a story, a narrative, it does actually have, kind of a trance-like effect. It just lulls you into the state. But I think, yes, that it's just a bit too uneven, a bit too flat, just one or two places, and not quite. You're not quite as investing as, say like a kind of full 5-star film, 10 out of 10 film would be. But I think this is a great film. I overall pretty much love the film. I think it's just got so much, in certain sequences, so much charm. It really is. It's something else to kind of portray. Convey this mood. This atmosphere and stuff. What I was trying to say through the visuals. It's a very different film, very risky. And of course, it is at times a bit too indulgent, as I say. But I think definitely a great film. It's so creative. I loved just the overall the use of colour. I think certainly the Pegasus sequence for me is just, it's wonderful. It's joyous. I think perfectly portrayed. The kind of fantastical nature. That piece of music. But just this overall kind of, in terms of world building. And I just think in terms of feeling, this is the greatest sequence in the film. This is a great sequence. You could say masterful. I absolutely loved it. It had as well the real sense of charm, of Disney, and just wonderful here. And even the sequences, where it's mostly just sort of dancing in the film, and there's not too much going on with characters. I think it's definitely a great film. So overall, of course, this is a wonderful film. This is not me saying that this is not, a great film. I do think it is. Not a stunning masterwork. There definitely is masterful moments in the film. And I think what a unique creation here. You have a film that is made with passion. It even shows within the orchestra. The narrator, of course, I just loved actually these segments as well. It's all part of the experience. Yes, I think the film should also be seen maybe without this. Just to give it more of a flow, and of course just a sense of wonder without them kind of explaining to you. But I don't floor the film for that, because it's very nice. And I think due to the fact that it's not an overall film where the narrative is one. This is not got a beginning, a middle, and an end. As an overall film, but it is a collection of shorts that do have somewhat of a progression in terms of development and kind of maybe mood. Although it kind of goes back and forth, I'd say a bit uneven. But I couldn't really warrant for me inside my mind not giving this a great rating, because there's so much genius in this film. Yes, I would say genius animation, the use of music, and just the overall, some of these sequences, are wonderful pieces of fantasy, that I loved, of course. I love fantasy. I love, of course, classical music. I think I always listen to classical music. Beethoven as well, my favourite classical composer. And the segment, with his music in there, of course, and that whole sequence for me is the best. It's wonderful. It represents the best, of the film, what it has to offer. And yes, there is definitely some flaws in this. I think it's a bit too uneven, a couple of moments where it's a bit too flat, a bit too experimental to be called a masterpiece. But for me, definitely a great film, as I've said, and I have to give it a 90%. Very high score from me. I don't think it's one of the best films ever made. I think it's the worst of the 5, original Golden Age films. But again, this is a great film. So I think all of these ones are great. 3 of them for me are masterpieces. And yes, 2 of them, of course, are in my top 50 of all time. We'll get to them, of course. The 3 I've not reviewed are the ones that I think are the masterpieces. So it'd be very interesting, of course, to see what people think in the comments. I am kind of surprised that this is as loved by a lot of audiences as it is. I do love the film, but I think very abstract. It is basically an art house Disney film. I think, and it doesn't have the kind of the level of charm for me, in my opinion, that the other ones have. The Golden Age and just a lot of animated films. I certainly love the film. I think I do have an affection for the film. I think it really has a great sense of atmosphere. There is genius in there, and I think it's wonderful what they've done with the classical music and how they kind of the segments in their own. most of the film, certainly apart from some of the ending and some of the beginning, I think is really, really wonderful stuff. But I think it is very, very interesting how this is as loved by a lot of audiences as it is. I think a lot of people, I just thought a lot of people would definitely prefer a lot of the other ones, but this seems to be higher on IMDb. So it's interesting. Not to say, of course, that I'm kind of, why is it like this? I love the film and it's a great one, but I think it's very interesting to see. Something like Dumbo as kind of crowd pleasing and stuff, or Snow White or Pinocchio. Are definitely not as loved as this film is, but it's a great film. I don't think it's one of the best films ever made. There are a lot of animated films, of course. Oh, recap. That I do think are some of the best films ever made. At least 10 animated films in my top 100. That I think are some of the finest films ever made. This isn't one of them. I think it is great, but it's not a masterpiece for me. Bit too uneven, bit too experimental and kind of slight parts are a bit flat. But the visuals, the use of music, the way that this kind of most of these sequences are just so wonderful. An explosion of colours, an explosion of sound, and just really, really human and spiritual and simple. Just something you can take in visually. As I say, whether or not the orchestra kind of has an impact on that, I don't really know. I think it'd be nice to see it without that. But again, because they're not really talking throughout each sequence, and they are very, very separate in many ways, it doesn't really taint the film. It's just, it's a bizarre film. Definitely, a lot of this is very, very bizarre, but it is a great one for me. I love the film pretty much. Whether or not it's in my top, kind of favourite films list, maybe not my top 500. But yes, I think it's a great film. That's kind of, if you asked, where it is in my ranking of the Disney animated films at the moment. The ones I've seen in recent memory. I think middling. It's not one of the worst, not one of the very best, but it is definitely a great one. And yes, highly recommend this film if you've not seen it. This is roughly my third watch now. So yeah, very, very interesting film. Very unique, of course. Some genius in there, but not quite a masterpiece for me. So yes, thanks for watching my review.